Welcome to the Searchlight Sessions. I am your host, Maggie McClure, and today I am very excited to have special guest Nora Felder. And Nora, are you coming from Los Angeles?
Yes, yeah. I am. I'm coming from my think tank, my music think tank in Los Angeles, actually.
That's awesome. Very, very cool office there that you've got. I'm going to tell our viewers a little bit of background info on you, and if there's anything that you would like to add, please feel free. So guys, Nora Felder, her company is Picture Music Company, and she is an elite music supervisor with projects like Stranger Things, What We Do in the Shadows, Donovan, Roadies, Californication, and so many more. Those are just a few of her credits, which are amazing. And she's a Grammy and Emmy Award-nominated professional with extensive experience utilizing very different types of music in very different kinds of productions. Very grateful that she could join us today to share her knowledge about the music business and music supervision in general with us. Thank you so much, Nora, for being here. Is there anything you'd like to add for our viewers on some background on how you got started, how you are, where you are today?
Well, yeah, I guess I got started when I was young. I lived in New York City, and I was working at a club booking record release parties and some live performances. Then I met Phil Ramone, the music producer. Fast forward, he hired me to work with him as his assistant. And then within 3 or 4 years, I rose to become the VP of his company. That was a great experience working with a top producer and some amazing artists, and learning about A&R so then I moved to LA and, decided that I wanted to, this field wasn't exactly popular, I guess, yet, as it is now. But I decided I wanted to go into something that tied music with film. And this seemed like an interesting path to take. So I decided to give it a try, see if I was any good at it. And I guess I was, and one thing led to another, and here I am. So,
That's
yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, let's just dive into some questions. So
sure.
You've worked on so many different projects. How do you determine the music that you're going to present to a director, and what do you source from when you're looking for music?
Well, I guess when I first start a project, I usually have a conversation with the director or the showrunners and try and get a feel for what they're looking for. Because, what a lot of people don't understand or should understand is a lot of times this isn't my vision that I'm enhancing. I'm actually enhancing someone else's vision. So it's more important for me to be able to tap into their vision in order to facilitate what they're looking for. Some directors and showrunners have a very clear vision of what they want musically, to the point where they'll even script songs. Some may not have as much, know what they want, and they're relying on me to provide, options for them to choose between. But I think the overall answer to that is I have to tap into what they want. And we have to remember, music is an art form, and art is subjective. So let's face it, even with a song, what gives you, Maggie, goosebumps might make somebody else go, ew. You know what I'm saying? So my job is really, first and foremost, to tap into what's going to give them the goosebumps. Mm-hmm. Not what gives, because a lot of times, it's not what gives me, because it's their canvas that they're painting. And they're going to pick the certain brushes that they feel work for their canvas. So I have to tap into them, mm-hmm. Right? I don't even know if this is answering the question you asked. Yeah. But anyway, this is free flow. But so I think you asked, what do we, how do I go about looking for music? So the first thing I do is I try to see if I can tap into what they're looking for or what they might respond to positively. So a lot of times for me, when it's a new relationship with a director or a showrunner, it's like dipping your feet in the water, testing if it's hot or cold. That's what it is. I will send them some songs and I'll say to them, if I send you something and you really don't like it, tell me, because that tells me something very important. So, so that's basically how I have to feel it out, how I'm going to present the music to them, or I should say what I'm going to present to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, where do I source it from? The word source always gets me. Well, from my room, from my mind, from many different sources. So, creative subliminal sources. And pending the project, if we're looking for a lot music from the 1920s, with all my reps and contacts, I might have people that I reach out to that have a lot of 20s music and say, hey, send me everything you got, send me all your gems. Or I might, really, it depends on what the creative needs are that will decide how I guess source it.
Mm-hmm.
I do love it when my ideas come organically. I'm not a big, and mind you, I'm not the norm here for everybody, but I'm not a big, what we call briefer. I don't send a lot of creative briefs out. I'll announce the projects that I'm working on, as most supervisors do. But there are some supervisors who do send a brief for every single scene they're looking for. I've heard there are supervisors, which is great for songwriters, that'll actually do a breakdown of every episode or movie they're doing and say what they're looking for and what budget they have for each of the scenes. I don't work like that at all. And there's some that just, some of them, they come up with their ideas, but a lot, they collect a lot from sending a lot of briefs for specific scenes. I tend to maybe, collect ideas in the beginning of the project, just let everyone free form and say, this is the project I'm working on. But for the most part, it's a very organic process for me. And that's a combination of, I'm always listening to music. I'm always putting stuff in my library. I'm always, I have a digital library and I'm always dividing it in folders for different themes and things like that. Also for projects. So for me, I want to keep it organic because I feel like then the end result is going to be more original. It's going to make my projects more unique. But I am not the norm. I mean, like I said, a lot of supervisors do send briefs out, do say what they're looking for. They provide descriptions, as you probably know, Maggie. You know this. And please interject, because I think your input on this is important as an artist too. Unless they're doing a thing, unless you're interviewing yourself later. No, but yeah. So a lot of people do send out a lot of briefs, but I think that from a songwriter's perspective, or someone who wants to get into the sync world, or an artist, you probably prefer it having like the supervisors that send out a lot of briefs. But on the other hand, I'll say for supervisors like me, when I hear a good song, I save it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll save it and I'll try and put it in some sort of folders that'll make me come to it again somehow, some way. So sometimes I might hear a song this year and I might not place it for maybe in 3 years. I'll go, there was that song.
Wow.
Oh, and then I'll do so it's a little more organic, but for sure I keep the good songs. I don't go, it's not right for this project, trash.
Right.
I save them if they're really good songs. But also on the other hand, and I'm trying to provide info that's helpful, I do work on a lot of projects that don't need the latest and greatest hit. They just want a good song. Yeah. So for that, and me, I try and find songs that are timeless. I don't want to go, oh, that's so 2017. You know what I mean? No, I just try and find good songs and not pay attention to the year.
Mm.
So it's great for artists to keep writing and evolving and following the trends. But if you write a song and it's solid and it's timeless, there are people like me out there that won't worry about if it was 3 or 4 years old,
Right.
or even 10 years old.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, something that comes to my mind to point out to our viewers is it's good to note that it seems like from what you're saying, every project is different. Every director is different. Every music supervisor is different.
Yeah,
Everyone
absolutely.
has a different process. And even if you have a certain one, it may change based on what project you're working on. So
Exactly. Like, I might, if it's an area of music that I don't have a lot of, like let's say somebody was looking for, I can't think of anything, pop music from India or something. And I would try, I get to find, okay, who do I know that has great world music that might have, some Indian pop music?
mhm.
Or when I was looking actually for Persian pop music, I was calling, there's a huge Persian community in Los Angeles. And so I was calling around to some of the Persian record stores in Glendale,
Okay.
asking for label ideas. My interns were helping me too. So, it's all different. It depends on what I'm looking for, really, truly. And I have certain sources that I go to for different things that I might think, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that. So I might reach out to certain sources that I feel might have whatever that may be. There are a lot of reps out there, a lot of what they call sync reps who
Mhm.
rep, a lot of indie artists and known artists. There's all kinds, but I'll know who to go to pending my needs, because to me they are like the A&R of like A&R people at record labels.
Yeah.
They're constantly going and looking for people, discovering music that can be used for syncs. And I love some of those companies that are always like signing these new bands or finding these little tiny labels in these small towns.
Yeah.
So yeah, all different ways to source, and you're right, pens the project,
Yeah.
what we're looking for. So
Right. Well, what are some challenges that you come up against? Maybe things that happen often that now you know how to handle these situations as you're supervising films. What are maybe some of the challenges that come along with going into a project?
well, I think the most important things that I've learned over the years, well, a challenge is usually a music budget. Most of the budgets I do, I call them no middle class budgets. So
Okay.
they have enough money, maybe we'll talk in shows. Like for one episode, there might be enough money for one big song, but then there's a ton of other placement that have to be super, super indie.
Hmm.
So that's a challenge. So a lot of times what I do, which probably drives a lot of people crazy, but I have to, is if I start collecting ideas for the project, I try and kind of pre-vet a price gauge, because my part of my job as a supervisor is to keep the show in the budget. And I never want to pitch anything and then go and they fall in love with it and I go, guess what? You can't have it because we don't have the money. And of course, whenever you tell someone they can't have something, they really want it. That's just animal instinct, right?
Right.
So one thing I've learned over the years is to really pre-vet, and even when I pre-vet, mistakes happen. Like someone will go, oh, I didn't realize one of the writers is on a major label or sorry, major publisher. And I'll be like, uh-oh, that's not going to be super indie.
Mhm.
So one thing I've learned is to just try and pre-vet as much as possible to prevent that happening.
Mhm.
Because for me, I never want to send things in that I can't afford, or I can't find all the clearance parties that are involved with it. Or there's a debate, and that's something that has happened once in a while, where you find out there's a debate between the songwriters over who has what percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, and we'll get into this more later when we're talking about sync companies, that's why it's always good to go to sync companies for indie music, because, they usually vet all that stuff. They make sure that everyone's got everything figured out, which, as you know, as songwriters and artists, when you go in the studio or you start working with some other co-writers and a producer, it's really important for you. I always tell my friends songwriters this. It's really important for you to work out, maybe right when you finish the session, or right when you're starting the session, or as the session's evolving, what's the percentage splits? Because there have been times when things don't get used because they're fighting. They're in contest of who controls how much. And I'm not going to pay 125% for something, right, because one party thinks, so the point is not to go down that rabbit hole. Make sure you've got it worked out, and the producer as well. Mm-hmm. Is the producer get anything? Is the producer, maybe does the producer get a piece of the songwriting, or is the producer maybe getting just a piece of the sync fee, but not the writing? There are many different deals you can come together and figure out, but the point is to figure it out.
Yes.
And then to get it on paper. Mm-hmm. So that there are no misunderstandings later, because when a placement happens, all of a sudden everyone's hand is up.
Right.
And that formula that you thought you all discussed and agreed on can change.
Yeah.
So I really encourage that.
Yes, I do too. I would say from personal experience, we've really learned to take care of our producer agreements before we even record a note. That way it's clear what the arrangement is, and always have it on paper for sure. And
yeah.
As far as writing sessions, we always decide right then and there at the session, at the end of it, when we can determine, and most of the time it is equal splits, but it's still a conversation that has to be had.
Now, let me ask you, because I think this is important discussion for everybody. Do you paper it quickly, or how do you do that? Or do you kind of...
I go ahead and register it on ASCAP and let them know to get it in motion, because it just kind of solidifies it and says, this is the agreement. And
do you ever have situations, and we don't have a ton of time, so we won't go down, but I think this is important stuff for everybody. Do you ever have situations where somebody wakes up and goes, I thought about it and I feel like I contributed more than... Do you ever have that?
Not really.
Good.
Honestly,
because I've heard of that. Yeah. No, that's great. The only point I'm trying to is, you see where we're going here, where Maggie and I are going here, because this is important. You have the supervisor and the artist perspective, the songwriter perspective. That's really important. Just make sure you have an agreement, you get it registered. Maybe after a session, you maybe confirm it via email, even if it's somebody that you haven't worked with before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you never know. It's like you just say, hey, just to confirm, I'm going to go register the song. I'm going to do a 33 and a third, 33 split. And in whatever it was, you just write it out, and I'm getting it registered. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. Yeah. Let me know that you got this email.
Exactly.
If they say, yeah, all good, there you go. There's your proof. And it's good for everyone to have it, because people do forget.
Yeah.
That too. They might go, oh my God, didn't we agree that because we, wrote all the lyrics that we were going to get a bigger percentage? And, that's the thing. You can go, oh, look at the email.
Right. And well, like you're saying, it is a legitimate thing that could happen. That we literally could forget.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to do it right after the session. It's in your mind. Everyone is in agreement. And I usually do, like you're saying, if I don't know the writer very well, I usually will write an email just confirming I'm going to go ahead and register this. Here's our agreed upon splits. Great song. Great to work with you.
But also with the recording, everybody. what's the agreement with the recording? Because remember, when you get a placement, because this is about placements,
Yes.
when you get a placement, you're going to get a publisher shares fee, and you're also going to get the recording side fee. So you have to make an agreement on the ownership of that recording as well.
Yes, for sure. And that is
Yeah.
separate. And I would suggest that there is a contract for that, because
Yes,
there could be a lot of different arrangements for
exactly.
producers, and that needs to be spelled out, because if you are coming to work with a producer as an artist and maybe you don't have a budget that they're used to working with, then you do give them a piece of the publishing or a piece of the sync fee,
Yeah.
in addition to a smaller upfront fee for their time. But if you agree to paying them their full rate and nothing on the back end, that's an arrangement as well. You just all have to be clear and on the same page. And
Yes, and be clear about it, because there's all different kinds of arrangements. Exactly. Yeah, I think hope you guys do a side another, thing, and you should go into all this in
yeah,
depth,
yeah,
with everybody. It's all good stuff.
yes, it is. And things that people don't really talk about that often. So I'm glad that we're discussing it.
You got to talk about it. It's like doing a prenup. No, I don't know if it's like doing a prenup, but seriously, it's things people don't want to talk about, especially creative people. Because there's people, artists who are creative and business. They can do both, but most songwriters are mostly creative.
Right.
Got to take care of the business.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's how you're going to make money.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
you gotta and if you're uncomfortable, get someone who is comfortable to help you do that.
Exactly.
It's an understanding, so nothing comes up later,
Sure.
and it's just all understood.
Yeah. Well, and we want to make our music as easy to work with as possible,
Mm,
music supervisors and directors. And
exactly.
so it's just better, it's best for everyone if the artist takes care of their business, which can
Exactly.
be very easy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
let's talk about, if there's anyone out there watching who would like to be a music supervisor, what are some tips that you would give them, um, so that they could start working towards that goal?
Well, first and foremost, I recommend that go to a school, and I mean, I'm not online schools. Um, in Los Angeles, there's UCLA extension classes, and honestly, I don't know, but everything's online now. So I wonder if now it seems like you wouldn't have to be in Los Angeles to take the UCLA extension on music supervision, which is taught by music supervisors. Loyola also has a music supervision program, and USC does, I believe. Yeah, USC does. There's also Berklee School of Music in Boston has a program. I'm not familiar with that program because I don't know if they have real supervisors, so I don't know. But the
Okay.
bonus of these programs is they're real supervisors, and friends of mine even, and they give you a general idea of what supervision is, because a lot of people think it's this dream job where you sit around and just find music. It is not that. There's parts of that.
Mhm.
But the administration duties and the paperwork and the clearances and the charts and the spreadsheets and the budgets, it's, a lot of people will drop out from those classes because they're like, oh my God, I could never do that, And also, so not to sidebar because we don't have a ton of time, but so I would recommend anyone who's interested takes one of those classes, or a few of them. Maybe you try one at one school, one at the other. And if you're still interested after that, maybe you could offer, if they're in school, they can offer some internships. Maybe they can do some paid internships. I'm not really sure how that works, but some sort of, usually, I mean, I'll be honest, for me, I get interns from schools who are in music programs. I don't know how it would work if somebody was older and not in school. I don't mean older, but I mean just not in school. I don't know can you be an intern if you're not in school? I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But definitely to take those classes for sure.
Okay.
And to make sure you have a full understanding of what it is. And then the rest, it's, it's a job that is really very left and right brain, and you have to be great at both, and most people aren't great at both.
Yeah.
So their strength is to the left or to the right.
Right.
And it really takes a particular person who can flip back and forth on a dime.
Yeah.
Flip to creative, flip to business, flip to budgets, flip to handling politics, flip.
Yeah.
I've had people who have come in to try and they're like, I can't do this.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, now we got to jump and look for songs. Okay, now we got to jump and work on a budget. Okay, now and they're like, oh boy, I'm out of here. Because they just think you sit in the office and you play music. Isn't that a pretty idea? And you send it, and it's all so dreamy and fun. And now I'm going to run to a concert and go hang out backstage. No, it's none of that. It's hard work. And, I'm not saying this to detour people, because, of course, I want to encourage if there are some people out there that can do it.
Right.
But the best is only a small number, so, my first step would be to take those classes.
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to wear a lot of hats. So just watching this, if you're thinking about being a music supervisor, think about all the things that Nora's talking about and the different jobs and responsibilities that being a music supervisor entails.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the difference between music supervising a TV show versus a film versus an ad. Is there a difference in your role, and also how would musicians approach those different mediums in a different way?
Well, there isn't a difference in TV and film, because it's all about complementing or underscoring the story at hand, whatever that story is, right?
Right.
With ads, it's a brand.
Yeah.
So it's finding songs that kind of have something that encompasses whatever that brand is. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think it's really a matter of, I think most ads pick songs that tell it in an interesting way. It's not so much. I remember like 15 years ago, it seemed like every song was, it's a brand new day,
right?
And it was just to me, sorry if I'm offending anyone that has a song called Brand New Day, but that's a very generic wah, wah, wah. Right. Now they're getting more interesting, more innovative, picking lyrical content that tells the story in a special way. But again, it's a brand.
Yeah.
So how do you tackle them differently? I think that if you're trying to write for sync and you want to try and write for brands, first study commercials, study how things are used, even study how things are used overseas. You can find anything on the internet now, brands, how they tell the story, and then try and experiment with maybe some lyrics that could encompass it but in its own unique way. So, if I think about it, that's what I look for also in TV shows.
Right.
And in movies, if I can find a song that tells it in a unique way. But the difference is I'm trying to tell something for a moment or for a character, mm-hmm. but that would be for a brand, right. Something that represents the brand. So it almost has to be, it's got to be bigger. It's got to be a bigger statement almost, mm-hmm. In my mind.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the difference.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Well, with the shift of streaming and so much content right now, how do you see that affecting opportunities for artists? Do you feel like there's a lot more opportunity now because there's so much more content?
Absolutely. Absolutely. More content, more opportunities for music, for the content, for composers. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
very encouraging to all of
Yeah.
you. So let's talk about soundtracks. It seems like in recent years, they haven't been as popular as maybe they used to be 15, 20 years ago, but they're
Right.
starting to make a comeback. You have put a very successful one together for Stranger Things. And how do you feel like productions will be creating soundtracks in the near future? Do you feel like that's going to kind of make a comeback?
Well, I hope so for the right project. I think it is. It feels like it. It feels like more studios are more open to it. I think what it really came down to is, yes, years ago, years ago, probably 90s, soundtracks were really hot and they were selling like crazy. Like they had movies like Sleepless in Seattle and films like that. And then they had all this catalog stuff and those, Forrest Gump and all these movies. And those soundtracks just sold like, they used to say hotcakes. They sold like crazy.
Yeah.
Then there was a big lull. And I think, it just, soundtracks weren't as exciting. And the industry just kind of went away. Oh, and at that time, the music industry was the record labels were dumping advances into that the studios could use toward the licensing budget. So there was more money. Then that stopped. And I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank as to what happened. It feels like it was so long ago, but the industry basically went down. What happened? It just like all of a sudden nobody wanted to touch soundtracks.
Yeah. It's weird because I remember, growing up, I was obsessed with the Bodyguard soundtrack, even though my parents wouldn't let me watch the Bodyguard.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with the Bodyguard soundtrack.
Yeah. That was huge.
The parents.
So it went away. Soundtracks weren't selling as much. People weren't interested. So it just kind of, the labels, if they put out a soundtrack, they weren't willing to give advances. So then the studios were like, why should we do all this work if we're not getting advances that will go toward our licensing budget? That's just more work for us. And why should we add all this extra work if things aren't selling? So basically, nobody wanted to do it. Now, yes, I think it's been coming back the last couple of years. People are more interested. And I think one of the reasons for that is back catalog is kind of king and queen right now. And I think, and I'm not just saying it because I think Stranger Things had something to do with this. I think when Stranger Things came out, all of a sudden, everybody was going crazy for 80s, from grandmothers to mothers to the kids. Mm-hmm. Everyone wanted the music. To the kids, it was new.
Yeah.
And I think it just brought back this resurgence and appreciation of catalog. And, I think it was one of the reasons, I should say.
I agree.
But yeah, so even look at the Quentin Tarantino soundtrack for that, the last film. I mean, that one did really well too. And it's all back catalog. Normally you would think, or like what they would say, when everything was bad was, why should we put us out soundtracks with all this music when everybody can just stream it or get it directly? No, people want the soundtracks. They want a momentum of what they saw, and they want vinyl. Vinyl's back. That has to do with it too. But it wasn't like, even with Stranger Things, it wasn't just about that it was released. It was about having the cool, I don't know if you can see it. It's not over there. Having the cool discs with the different colors. It became the packaging that became important again.
Yep.
So I think that, yes, people are more, the networks and the studios are more open to it, but they do have to feel like it's the right project. Mm-hmm. They do have to feel like, the metrics add up, that the music is so important that there is going to be a music buyer for it.
Yeah.
I think they're carefully reviewing which projects they would consider doing soundtracks with.
Mm-hmm.
So because it is more work for everybody, including me. I used to put out a Californication soundtracks, and I used to make jokes, and this is when CDs were still happening. And I used to go, well, it's mementos on people's desks that they can put their coffee mug on top of, because they really didn't sell very well. Really didn't, but we just did it because we loved it and we put them out. But I will say it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I think the return with the work, I don't know, but we're just like, let's do it. And Showtime was cool. They're like, you want to do a soundtrack? Do a soundtrack. They were fine. They're like, go ahead. They were a little more loose about it, but it was a lot of work, And so what I'm saying is the studios and labels are taking that into account as well.
Well, and to your point about Stranger Things, you made some amazing musical decisions with that show, and I really do feel like that's been pivotal in music, in film and TV since Stranger Things has come out. A lot more people are wanting an 80s sound, which they would have, I don't know if they would have thought about that on their own before, but
no, it's the leaders and the followers, I think. Yeah, it's all of a sudden after, the composers with their amazing synth score, all of a sudden synth came back because of that.
It's awesome.
They essentially put it back on the map in a big way.
Yeah.
So, I think it's wonderful when that happens.
Yes.
But yeah,
I agree. It was really cool to see that happen. And
yeah, it was that was a phenomenon that no one, I knew it was a great project. We all believed in it, but you never know what's going to hit. We don't have crystal balls.
Right.
So I thought, yeah, it'll do well. The acting's so great. The stories are so great. It's going to do good. But who could expect it was going to take over the world,
That's
so,
awesome.
But yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's
Pretty
really
awesome.
cool. So how do you discover new music? I know we've talked a little bit about this. Do you go to a lot of different sources? You talked about licensing agents and reps, past contacts, labels, friends.
Yeah, every which way.
Yeah.
Driving in the car, flipping my, Spotify. I love Spotify and just e-surfing Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting in my office at night with the stars coming through the wind, staring at, looking at my CDs, looking at my albums, any which way, every which way. Because as I said earlier, I want it to be organic, an organic process.
Yeah.
And I'm on a lot of the lists. I get a lot of the e-blasts from the labels and publishers, from indie people. So whenever I can, because I'm usually focused on what I'm looking for, I try and go through the blasts, new album announcements, try and go through if I think, oh, what's this? Honestly, there's always way more than I can ever go through. But what I land on is what I land on. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. The truth of the matter is I can't go through it all.
Right.
Even if I did it day and night and didn't do anything else and ignored my family, it's impossible. So whatever happens, happens.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I will land on something, e-surfing something, and I'll be like, I can't believe that is the perfect thing for that. And a lot of times, as I said earlier, it comes from very organically.
Mm-hmm.
But again, back to the audience that we're talking to, they might be thinking, yeah, it's hard to get placements with Nora because of that. Yeah, it could be. But I think everyone should just stay focused on writing the best songs they can write in their own unique way. And, not worrying about, one specific supervisor, or because I'm sure that some of the songs I've landed, people were like shocked, you know what I mean? So you just never know how it's going to happen. We just each as individuals have to do the best we can.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's good advice. And, for those watching, maybe a good first step is have your catalog, know all of the arrangements, whether, you have co-writers, what the percentages are, your producer agreements, have your catalog all together, do you suggest Dropbox or something similar for artists to use when they're sending their music to licensing agents or music supervisors?
You know, from what most supervisors, excuse me, are using Disco now.
Okay.
But you know what? I mean, that costs, I believe. You can't do Disco for free. Do whatever you can afford. They love Disco, but you can, I don't know, is Box.com still free? I don't know.
I don't know if it is.
Yeah, it was free for a long time. We transfer. I don't know if that's free. You know, those are the kind of companies that are usually very acceptable.
Mhm.
So you can look into them. I think you can do box.com, but you can only get a certain megabytes for free. Same as Dropbox.
Yeah.
But look into what options you can afford, and any option, as long as the person is able to either download the whole thing. Let's say you sent 7 songs, download all of them at once, download one at a time, or just stream it and pick what they want to download.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you've left it open for whatever, just think of it as like it's your restaurant and the person's walking in, they can do all you can eat, they can down, as long as people like different things. There are some supervisors that'll just download everything that comes in and throw them in one big fat folder and go through them. There's some that'll just download the specific songs they want. And some of them might click on and stream the songs they want, but not download anything. But the point is you want to give them the option to do it the way they do it, because everyone does it differently.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what advice would you give to an artist if they were trying to send you music? What makes you open an email and listen to a song?
Well, again, I'm such an honest person and I want to guide you guys in the right direction. I really truly do. And I probably get about 800 emails a day.
Wow.
So, and most of the time, like it's even hard for me. Like I have to I have to mark them VIPs just so that my producer emails don't get lost in the ton that's come in.
Right.
And there are people that'll reach out to me and go, I'll be like, oh, I really need music. They're like, I sent you. I'm like, oh no, because the mass that's coming in is crazy. So it's hard to get to me directly. And also because, which we kind of touched on before, I don't know who you are. So, the thing is, I strongly recommend that indie artists, and you don't have to, but I strongly recommend that they get reps, sync reps, of which there's many of, because the thing is, a lot of us don't accept unsolicited material because we don't. It's like meeting someone in a bar online. You don't really know them. They could say they wrote all their songs and they actually didn't. You know what I'm saying? So, and from my point of view, the companies, the networks that are hiring me in the studios, they're trusting that I am using reliable sources and I'm doing my due diligence to get that piece of paper signed to not put them in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to make you understand why it's hard. I'm not saying never say never, but it's hard for me to even fathom clicking on an email from somebody that I have no idea anything about them. Did they really write the song, or do they think they wrote the song, or you know what I mean?
Right.
So what's great about going through reps, of which there are so many of, it is that I know for the most part, they've done their due diligence. They've helped the artists walk through all that.
Right.
Now, there are situations where, some artists, because for example, I have a website, picturemusiccompany.com, and I do consulting. I don't do it a lot because supervision takes up all my time, but I do consulting for songwriters, as well as sometimes for small little labels that want me to kind of do an analysis of their music. And some of them will come to me, and that's why I'm bringing this up, and they'll be like, I really want to do it on my own. I want it before I go to a sync agent, because they take half your money in one way. Because, Maggie can go into this maybe when she does her session. You like the way I'm making sure you do a session.
I love it.
There are different deals you do with sync agents as well.
Right.
Some just take a half front fee of the sync fee, and the publishing's fine. Some act as a publisher, but they collect on the publishing only in relation to the placement. They're all different kinds of deals. But some songwriters or producers who have come to me with a little catalog, they'll be like, Nora, I really want to try it on my own. So I say, all right, then design a website. I'll give them some pointers on, what supervisors are interested in. Design your website. Make sure you have this, and this in line. And these are the best ways to put your music up. And we go into details about that. So at least they can set up a site and set up their own little kind of, setup so that they can maybe start acquiring supervisor lists and sending them introducing blah. Now, still hard for us to, get them to click on it. It might take a while, click on, because again, we're all getting so much music, but not impossible. And if you present yourself, if you're like a collective of writers, that you have a little company, you make your own little company, or like I said, a producer who has different artists. If you present yourself in a really together way, you might, you can try it on your own and see if you can get some people, to click on your links and download your music and so there are different ways. And if you're a single artist determined, like it's just me, I'm the songwriter, I'm the artist, I want to do it, then maybe you form a website too when you get it all lined up, and then you present, it's the way you present yourself and give it a go, I guess. Because I never want to completely discourage somebody, but I just want to be honest. It is harder. It's harder to get someone's attention, as you know, Maggie.
Right.
And sometimes it happens slowly, but I mean, what do you think? What's been your experience?
Well, I mean, we've had a lot of experience with a lot of this stuff, and I can say there's a lot to be said for someone who wants to try to do it on their own, but there is a reason why a licensing company takes a percentage. It's because they have those relationships that you're saying. You're probably not going to click on the email unless you know who it's from. So I think, try to do it on your own. If you can get it all together and have it presentable, like what you're saying, Nora. I've gotten a lot of placements on my own. I've had over 50, and I would say a dozen of them have come from licensing agents, and the rest have come directly from me. It is really hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard work.
And there's no clear path, really. You have to have all your stuff together, and you have to be extremely proactive and responsive and easy to work with. And it's a lot as an artist to have to wear all of those hats as well, but it is possible. But like what you're saying, I do currently have, a couple different licensing agents that represent different material of mine. And of course, now have my own licensing company with Monique and Chris. And there is a lot to be said for the relationships that the agents have.
Right, exactly.
And it's a lot of work for them, for licensing agents, to get your song placed. So there's a reason why they're taking a cut. It's not like, oh, well, I did all the work because I wrote the song. Yes, you did, but this opportunity never would have happened if it weren't for this agency. So I could see both ways.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but my job's a lot of work. Being an artist is a lot of work. You just have you're not going to come easy,
right?
For most people,
right?
You hear those stories of, somebody's song ended up in an ad. Okay, that's not the norm.
Right.
It happens. But, everything I've done in life, I've had to work really hard for.
Yes.
And I think most of us are meant to do that, to work really hard to get to what we want. So it's like we don't want to be discouraging, but on the other hand, it is a lot of work. And I think that an important thing to bring up is do your research. If you really want to get into syncs, do your research. Because the thing I always say, and I say it in my consulting, on panels all over the world, there are great songs and there are great songs for placement.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, a lot of times, one and the other are not the same. There's so many artists that I love that I sit and listen to in my own private time because they're so powerful and they make they just so in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
But they tell so much of their own story that they can't stand behind another story. And you got to realize the songs for placements the goal is to sell that story, not that song.
True.
If it becomes that the soundtrack is important, well, that's another thing. I mean, the songs are more prominent, but in general, if the story in the song is telling this whole other story and you put it behind a scene telling another story, it's very confusing.
Yeah.
Unless it's playing really low in the bar and the vocal isn't intrusive and it's just kind of background wallpaper, of which a lot of placements, are. I mean, a majority of the placements are background music, let's face it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of artists and songwriters that make a lot of money on background music and you never hear them prominent. Everyone's going after the prominent scene or the end title, which go after it. But those are the fewer placements. I know there's singer-songwriters and sync companies who make their most money out of the tons of background bars, restaurants, earbuds, whatever, and they just keep getting a ton of those placements.
That's awesome.
So, my main overall thing is you do your homework. Watch the different shows and the different movies. Look how the music's used. Pay attention to commercials. Pay attention to how they use music. Go to tunefind.com, TUNEFIND. You can look up on there the different shows. You can look up different artists and see what their music's been used for. Do your research. That's really the best. I think the best advice, because if you really want to start building a career in this area or writing for sync, the more knowledge is power to you. And then you can take that knowledge and interpret it artistically in your own way to how you're going to present music that's going to be able to complement other stories. So that's my recommendation.
That's awesome advice. Well, on that note, I think we have covered a lot of great territory here. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off?
I think the thing is just, it's a tough time for everybody. And I have talked to a lot of artists who have said to me that they've just gone through this funk where some of them have processed it and written about it. Some of them have just kind of frozen. But, it's a tough time. Just get through it, process it the way you can. And if you get these creative spurts, take advantage of it. I think there's going to be a lot of stories coming out now that are dealing with people with masks and the pandemic. So I'm not saying go write a song about the pandemic, but you can, write songs about feeling trapped and things like that. I bet you that's going to come into play a lot.
Yeah.
But, and just, try and, you try and tell something interesting in your way, something that makes you special. Just try and be authentic. Yes, there are certain perimeters you want to kind of stay in, like I said, but try and be authentic. And, just remember you're writing for themes that happen in stories. And over the years, the themes are basically the same. Stories are the same. It's about love. It's about death. It's about loss. It's about believing in oneself. It's about conquering above all odds. It's about heroicness. It's about evil. It's about, all the subject matters and stories never change. The style maybe does.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when you're writing things, or if you have an experience that leads you to write something that you think can have a universal message in its own way, or can be interpreted in a universal way, then you're on the right path.
Awesome. Thank you. Wonderful advice. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. And I hope everybody in Oklahoma is doing okay out there, as okay as they can. I know that's a blanket statement because there's probably people that aren't doing okay. But great music comes from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that some of you special people, because I know some of you are, and I know that some of you who are watching this have music that other people want to hear. Mm-hmm. So keep making the music and let's get it out there.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much, Nora.
Okay. You take care. Be safe, everybody. Keep your head up.
Nora, thank you so much for being here with us for the Searchlight Sessions. This video series is to help up-and-comers in the entertainment business to expand ways that they can be successful. Stay tuned for some takeaways from this session with Nora to help with your success.